Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 1 of our 6-part Shadows Over Innistrad full set review. So today we are going to look at all the white cards that are in this new set. And as far as flip cards go, we're going to look at anything that starts out as a white card. So even if it flips into another color, if you cast it for white, you're going to see it in this installment. So as we go through the week, we'll tackle each color, get through the color pie, and then we'll end with all the multicolor and colorless cards. And finally, the following day, we'll do a pre-release primer. So hopefully by then you'll be ready for next weekend's pre-release. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, hey, it's definitely a good time to do so. We got a lot of content coming out all the time, but especially this week with a set review. So having said that, if you haven't watched one of our set reviews in the past, basically what we're going to do is try to go relatively quickly through each card and talk about where they have the most impact, whether that's limited, standard, commander, modern, or what have you. And some cards obviously are going to really fall into one of those buckets. Some could be played in multiple arenas, and we'll try to notate that for you best as we can. So having said that, let's get started. We got a lot to talk about. And first card is Always Watching. Now, this one I'm kind of torn out. When I first saw it, I was kind of excited about it. But then I started thinking about it. I was kind of like, well, where do I want to play this card? The only issue I have is it's a cool effect, and it can be quite powerful. But in standard, I think the deck that is going to end up being kind of the white, maybe white-green deck, is going to be very aggressive, and it's going to be looking to put a lot of creatures out fast. And I don't think it wants to take time off to put this card out in most cases. And yes, when you put this card out, you do get an immediate reaction. You do get +1/+1 and vigilance to all your creatures. But I think I'd rather just put another creature down as opposed to play this and try to go wide as opposed to going tall. I think the deck that's going to be successful in standard, based off what we're seeing from this new set, is going to be the wide deck in white. It's going to be the white weenie, Selesnya weenie style deck. And I don't know if this quite plays well with what that deck's trying to do. Now, having said that, this is a great limited card. I'm very happy to play this in limited as long as I'm relatively creature heavy, which usually you are in limited, right? So it will do work for you there for sure. Next we have Angelic Purge, and you're going to see a few white cards that have this tag on it as an additional cost to cast, sacrifice a permanent. I think that's actually pretty well designed for white because it helps you get Delirium. It lets you choose what type of permanent to get rid of that you might need to hopefully hit your 4th card type for that mechanic. And also, in some cases, it works as an advantage. Having said that, let's talk about this card particularly. This exiles an artifact, creature, or enchantment, so it doesn't go in the graveyard, so it doesn't help your opponent with anything that's going to be any graveyard shenanigans in the future. And it is pretty decent removal for white. So there are better options out there. We're going to see one in a little bit, but I think this is a little more versatile, so it could potentially see some standard play. It's going to be great for you in limited, though. You'll be happy to have this as your removal in either draft or sealed. Angel of Deliverance. So when I first saw this card, I kind of felt like, wow, if there's a reanimation strategy, this could be really great. As far as reanimation goes, we'll see in a couple days when we get to black. There's one okay black reanimation card, but that's kind of it. So I guess my hopes are kind of dashed on seeing a reanimation deck in standard that's going to be relatively consistent. But who knows? We'll kind of wait and see, I guess. But having said that, this is going to be a really awesome commander card. This will be fantastic to play in commander. And I think this is still good in limited. Even though it's a little pricey, it's just a big creature that has evasion, and with Delirium it can do some pretty crazy things. So it will be at the top of your curve, but it will do work for you in sealed and draft too. Apothecary Geist. You're going to notice with the spirits that they're relatively low power. They're mostly flyers that have 2 power, and this is just the first example of many that we'll see. So paying 4 for a 2/3 flyer, even though I might gain some life out of this, isn't super exciting. Not going to get into the world of standard, but this is going to be fine in many decks in limited. Might not always make your cut, but if you're looking for evasion, this will be there for you, and you'll be okay playing it. All right, our first mythic of the day, Archangel Avacyn. And of course, she transforms into Avacyn the Purifier. Now, Archangel Avacyn, let me tell you, this is Sarah Angel on steroids. I mean, she's got all the Sarah Angel stats, but then you throw Flash on top of it, and then the fact when she enters the battlefield, all your creatures are indestructible till end of turn. And then if a non-angel you control dies, she turns into the 6/5 flyer, deals 3 damage to all creatures, other creatures, and each opponent. So this card's nuts. First off, let's talk about Commander. I think this is an awesome Commander card. This could be your Commander. It's legendary, so that's kind of cool. And on top of that, limited. Yeah, I don't think I need to say this is a limited bomb. I think this could see some play in Standard. I think the only thing you have to be careful of, though, is the type of deck that wants to play this is probably kind of the white weenie deck and wants to put this at the top of its curve, but unfortunately it also kills all their creatures that are toughness 3 or less. So maybe it's a Nambo in that deck, so I don't know. But I feel like there's going to be some deck that's going to want this. It just seems good enough to see Standard play, even though I might not be sure. Maybe we haven't yet seen the deck that's going to be running this. Next is Avaconian Missionaries, and this one's a good limited card. Here's the deal with this. I mean, in limited, paying 4 for 3/3 is just fine, and if you have some equipment, you can transform this into something bigger, and also oubliette a creature at the same time. That ain't a bad deal. So again, this is a way to get rid of a creature without sending it to the graveyard, so that's very important. And I think it's a little too clunky for Standard, but this will be very good for you in limited. Bound by Moonsilver. Now this is kind of the pacifism of this set, and it's actually very, very good and limited. Again, this is another way to stop a creature without sending it to the graveyard. Again, very important in this format. And what I like about this is, even though I'm paying 1 more than I normally would, I'm also turning off the transform ability, and I also have the option to perhaps sacrifice a permanent later and change this target to something else. And I do like that versatility. So I would say that this potentially could find its way into Standard. Maybe not 4 ofs in decks, but maybe a 1 or 2 of coming out of the sideboard in certain decks. So watch for it to see maybe a tad bit of Standard play, but it's going to be phenomenal for you in limited. Bygone Bishop, and here's another one of those spirits with 2 power and flying. Now this one's a little more economical, and I'd be probably a little more happy to play this one in limited. Again, the spirits don't seem to be quite there for any kind of Standard deck, at least not a Spirit Tribal deck. Some of them may cross over a little bit into another deck that needs evasion, but I think for the most part these are going to be limited cards, and this will be fun to draft though. Like, I think if you draft a lot of these flyers, you might be able to just overwhelm your opponent just with evasion, and this is a fine card for limited. Next is Cathar's Companion, and this is another just fine limited card. Sometimes it will just trade with another creature, and you might be just content with that. And, you know, if you get some points of damage across because you can make this indestructible, or maybe you can make it eat a small creature or something, hey, bonus, it really got more than your money's worth out of it. So, yeah, good card to run in limited. Not maybe in multiples, but a 1-of's alright, I think, in a lot of decks. Chaplain's Blessing. Okay, so I'm never a big fan of these just kind of gain life cards, and it seems like Wizards just keeps trying to push them and push them and push them, and this one's pretty pushed. I mean, it only costs 1 for 5 life. Granted, it's sorcery speed, but I just don't feel like I want to be doing this. I want something that's more offensive than just wasting a card and maybe a turn to gain life. So where do you use this card? Basically, when I'm playing limited, this is in my sideboard, and I know it's there in case I'm going up against an ultra aggressive deck. So I'm just getting beat down in the first couple turns, and I need something like this to get me back on my feet. Well, I'm probably still not in a great position, but I might sideboard it in at that point. Other than that, yeah, it's probably not going to be too useful. Dauntless Cathar, another good limited creature. This one is a little more economically cost for a 3/2 for 3. I don't mind 3 power for 3 mana when I'm playing limited, but what I really like about this is if it ends up in the graveyard, whether it gets milled there or I discard it or it dies, I still get some play out of it because I can still exile it then to get a spirit token in this case. And you're going to notice there's a few cards in white that do that, and I actually think that's pretty elegant. The only thing you do have to keep in mind, though, is it may be a nombo with Delirium. However, if you're playing Unlimited, you're probably playing with a lot of creatures. It shouldn't be that hard to get another creature in your graveyard at that point. But yeah, fine limited card. I don't really see it doing too much beyond that. Declaration in Stone. Now here's premium removal. This is the removal that you want. So it's rare. It's not going to show up all the time, but it only costs 2. Granted, it's sorcery speed, but that's okay because it only costs 2. And you're exiling the creature. It's not going to the graveyard, and you have the potential of maybe even exiling duplicate copies of that creature if they're out there. So in limited, yeah, of course, run this. Please run this if you're in white. There's no reason not to. I promise you'll be happy. And finally, in standard, yeah, it's good enough to run in standard. It's going to make its way into decks for sure. Could potentially even be strong enough for modern, maybe, but it is competing with things like Path to Exile, so I don't know if it will quite get there, but it is very good. Descend upon the Sinful. So here's what kind of makes me a little sad about this card, is it just reminds me that these big board sweeping effects more and more seem to be landing in the mythic spot, which is fine, and I guess that probably makes limited a little better, and I'm sure that's why they do it, but I don't know. I just like to see these effects maybe a little more frequently. I feel like this is more of a rare than a mythic, but having said that, it's going to be a good card. Obviously, in limited, board sweeps are always good. You can always manipulate them to make them work to your advantage, and you know, there are times where you're just winning and this is in your hand and you're not going to play it, but there's times when you're behind and you draw this and you're very happy to play it. So because of that, it's definitely worth running. If you have Delirium, this thing's a beating once you get that 4/4 Angel out. That's really amazing. And will it see standard play? If there's a control deck out there, maybe blue-white control deck, this could certainly be a part of it. It seems like the pieces are falling in place that could be a thing in standard going forward post-rotation, so we'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, this could see some standard play too. Devil Thorn Fox. So here's just a grizzly bear-ish type card. Instead of a 2/2, you get a 3/1, which again is going to be just fine for you in limited. Might not always make your cut if you got better things to do, but if you need a creature, the 2-drop, you'll be happy it's there. Drogskull Cavalry. Now this is the intro deck card, and if you've played with intro decks in the past, you kind of know that typically the marquee card of an intro deck is like a really good limited card, basically, and that's what this is. This is a really good limited card. A 4/4 flyer. It's a little pricey, obviously, at 7, but what's nice about it is you can then mana sink to get a bunch of spirit tokens, which is actually very good. So yeah, I don't mind picking this up in a draft or getting it in my sealed pool and just going with this as a mana sink if nothing else. Other than that, too pricey, obviously, for standard. Next is Eerie Interlude. And I was really excited when I first saw this card spoiled. I was hoping we'd see a lot more of these kind of blink shenanigans like we saw in Avacyn Restored. Now that we've seen the full set reveal, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of that type of thing going on, but maybe this is a precursor for something like that in the next sets, and one can hope. So hopefully we'll see more of that. This card in this set specifically, this is okay in limited if you have at least a few enter the battlefield effects and you feel like you can get some value out of this. If you're confident, go for it. If you don't feel like you have enough enter the battlefield effects, then I'd probably skip it, obviously. As far as standard goes, I don't think the pieces are there right now for this to really be great. But keep an eye on it because I do think this might be a clue of more to come in the future. This is a fantastic commander card, I will say, and also a great cube card because you can kind of put this in your cube with a lot of enter the battlefield effects, maybe in white, and it just becomes an enabler to a lot of stuff. And in commander, there's a lot of crazy hijinks you can do with this, of course. Emissary of the Sleepless. So here's another 2-power flyer that's a spirit, so it kind of falls in that trend, and this one kind of plays back to the old morbid mechanic which we saw in Dark Ascension in the previous block. So yeah, here's a card that actually plays well with the previous card, but nothing super exciting. Again, in limited, if you're looking for something that is going to give you a little bit of evasion, yeah, it's going to be fine for you. Might not always make your cut, though, if you got better stuff at the 5 spot. Ethereal Guidance. So, I don't know. I like these effects, but I like them more at instant speed. I even rather see a +1/+1 at instant speed for 3 than a 3+2/+1 at sorcery speed. I just like these better as a combat trick than I do as just, I don't know, I guess a win condition. Having said that, if there is a standard deck out there running a lot of small creatures, I don't think they want this as their win condition. I think there's other cards that are similar out there in standard right now that would be able to do a similar thing. Again, even if it's not pumping quite as much, they might be able to do it at instant speed. I think that's what they want as opposed to this card. So, yeah, it'll be okay in limited if you're going wide. If you're going wide and you need something like this, it's there for you. But again, there might be some better options even in your limited pool. Expose Evil. So this is another card that will probably be relegated to limited, but this can be a little swingy. You can tap down a couple creatures, get in there for a pretty big attack, and you get to investigate. So it does mean some maybe longer term card value, and it only costs 2. Plus it's an instant. So I don't mind running this in my limited deck, maybe a 1/of. Griff's Boon. Now, if you listen to my previous set reviews, you know I'm not a huge fan of auras. But every once in a while, there's an aura that comes around that I can get behind and I can kind of deal with. And I think this is one of those auras. And here's why. First off, it only costs 1, so it's not a huge commitment. And number 2, you can play it from your graveyard for 4. So what I like about that is you're not necessarily getting a full 2-for-1 if somebody destroys your creature with this on it, because you're able to then cast it out of your graveyard. Or maybe you discarded it, maybe it got milled, what have you. There's a lot of that type of thing going on in this set. Now I have something in my graveyard that I can actually play. So I don't know, I like it. And sometimes in limited you just want something to have evasion, and this will help you kind of get there. So I'm fine with running these. Again, I wouldn't throw 5 of them in my draft deck or anything like that, but running a 1/of something like this I'd be okay with. Next we have Handwear Militia Captain, and she transforms into Westvale Cult Leader. So this card I really like. So first off, it's just a grizzly bear at first, and that's just fine. You're going to be very happy and limited to play a grizzly bear. But then on top of that, once you get a few creatures out on the board, this thing flips. Now, when she's in her cult leader form, the most exciting part of that side of the card for me is the token generation. The power and toughness equaling the number of creatures is nice and actually can be very good at times, but she doesn't have evasion. So I'm not super excited about her stats as much as the fact that every end step I can get a 1/1 white-black human cleric, which hopefully eventually will overwhelm my opponent, and in turn also make her bigger as time goes on. So having said that, yeah, it's a limited bomb. I'd love to play this in limited. Again, most limited decks are pretty creature heavy, so this really plays into that. And I think this could see some standard play. Again, if you're looking at a wide white or wide white green deck out there, I'm sure Craig Wesco is thinking about this right now as we speak. I could see this being a part of it. Hope Against Hope. So, okay, this is one of those auras I'm not too excited about. And even though it seems pretty good, especially if you have a human, I don't want to pay 3 for this, and I just don't want to get 2 for 1. Now, granted, maybe it helps with my delirium because enchantment might not be the easiest thing to get in the graveyard, but other than that, I don't have a whole lot of nice things to say about it, so I'm probably not running this very much in limited. Humble the Brute. Here's an interesting one. Now, Smite the Monstrous, we just saw that in the last block, and it cost 1 less and basically did the same thing. Now this time I'm paying 1 more, but I also get to investigate. The thing is, Smite the Monstrous was relatively good in the last block because there were some big things. Some of those Eldrazi's you could easily take out at instant speed with that card. This time around, though, there are some big creatures, but there's a lot of small creatures. There's a lot of tribal sort of elements. There's a lot of going wide as opposed to going tall. So I feel like this isn't quite as good in this block. Now, in limited, if I'm up against a big creature, I'm still going to be very happy that it exists. I just don't know if I'm main decking this time around. I did main deck Smite, at least one Smite usually in the Zendikar block, but This time around, maybe this starts off in my sideboard. I don't know. I guess once I play more and kind of just feel the frequency of how often I run into large creatures early on, that then I'd have a better idea. But I think right now I'm thinking maybe sideboard and just bringing it in limited matchups that want this. Inquisitor's Ox. Yeah, this one's not super exciting for me. So even if I have Delirium, I'm paying 4 for a 3/5 Vigilance. I'll tell you what limited deck I would play this in, though. If I'm going slow, grindy, maybe I'm trying to play a little bit more of a control style. Maybe it's white-blue, maybe it's white-black. But on its own, this card just isn't super exciting for me. I think for 4, there's just better things I can be doing that are more aggressive. Inspiring Captain. Now here's one that's a 4-drop that's a lot more aggressive. So this is the perfect example of a card I would rather run than the previous one. So I'm getting a 3/3 now, and I'm also buffing my creatures for a turn. Again, it's not a quote-unquote combat trick. I mean, this card would be awesome if it had Flash, for example. But it could let me get in for some extra damage, especially if I have some spirits that can fly in. Some spirit tokens would be fantastic with this card. Or I just want to try to get an Alpha Strike in and end the game. So yeah, I'm happy to run this in limited. It's actually very good there. I don't really think it's going to quite make standard, even though it does pump the team. A little pricey, I think, for what it is. Militant Inquisitor. Now this one I'm not super excited about. There is some good equipment in this set. We'll see it once we get to that portion of the review. But I don't know. I just feel like you're just banking on the fact that you're getting some good equipment when you play this card. It's not going to feel real good when you play this and you don't have equipment to put on it. You don't draw the equipment. So I think most of the time I'm probably skipping this one unless I'm real confident I have some good equipment. Say Moorland Drifter, and it's a grizzly bear with upside, so it's going to be decent for you in limited, especially because a lot of times you are desperate for good 2-drops, and this is a good 2-drop. There may be better ones, but this one's fairly good, and if you get Delirium, 2/2 flyer for 2, you really can't beat that, so it'll be alright for you. Next is Nahari's Machinations, and I look at this on paper and I feel like this should be good. It's a really strong offensive card. I can just kind of put this down, make something indestructible on combat, and then when my opponent tries to block, really mess up their blocking by pumping mana into this. But the only thing is, the more I think about it, I just again feel like this is a good card that doesn't really have a home, because if I'm playing a maybe red-white aggressive deck, I think I just want to keep putting creatures down as opposed to tying up my mana to maybe use this ability. So it feels a little awkward, but having said that, I think it's great in limited. I'd be very happy to play this in limited. I'm not a huge fan of throwing down enchantments, but this one only costs 2, and you do get immediate benefit because you can use the indestructible ability as soon as it comes into play, so I'm okay with that. I think it'll be fine in that arena. Nearheath Chaplain, and this is similar to another card we looked at recently, but this one's a 3/1 for 4, but it has lifelink, but it also has that ability that you can exile it from the graveyard, but this time you get 2 1/1 white spirit tokens. I like this a lot in limited. You throw this down, 4 maybe feels a little pricey, but maybe it trades with a creature and you gain some life, but then getting the 2/2 spirit tokens on top of it kind of takes you to Value Town there, even though it does cost 3. So I'm actually okay with this. I think this is doing enough to run in limited. And hey, again, like the previous card, if I end up discarding it or it gets milled or what have you, I still have a play. So that's pretty cool. I'm not going to do much outside limited, but it'll be good there. Not Forgotten. Okay, I like this card a lot, maybe more than I should, but here's why. The first thing I say when I look at this card is I can maybe disrupt my opponent's Delirium, which is actually kind of awesome, especially if they have worked hard to get like that one awkward thing in their graveyard, like a land or an enchantment or something like that, and you can just basically put it back on top or bottom of their library, and you get a token for doing it, which is also a nice bonus, and you get all that value for just 2 mana. Granted, sorcery speed, but it's only 2 mana. More importantly, though, sometimes this thing is just a time walk. I mean, your opponent might be desperate for, I don't know, lands, or maybe desperate for something that's a non-land, and they're looking for a play or what have you, and you have the ability to take this and target a card from their graveyard and force them to put it on top of their library, basically nullifying their next draw. Yeah, that's kind of amazing for 2 mana. So limited, yes, play it. I think you're going to be very happy with the results here. And in standard, it's good enough. I think it will see standard play. This one potentially could see some modern play. I would not count it out. Not sure what deck, maybe offhand, but I think it's good enough to get there. Definitely will see some standard play, though. Watch out for this one. It looks a little bit unassuming, but it's very strong. Odric, Lunarch Marshal. So first off, have to point out the art appears to be George Clooney. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say it. So there it is. But the card itself, great card. So first off, let's talk about Commander, because this is the first thing I think of when I see this card. Awesome in Commander. I mean, just building a deck with a whole bunch of keywords and being able to really kind of abuse this mechanic, it's awesome. And he can be your commander, which is amazing. Who doesn't want George Clooney as their commander? I think that would be incredible. So that's the first thing I think of, but this is still a great card in Limited. I mean, paying for a 3/3 is just fine. It's economical enough. And even if you're only getting bonus without just one of those keywords, like say flying, that's fantastic. You'll be more than happy to do that in a limited game. And same thing for standard. Again, I talk a lot about the potential kind of white smash in beat down deck. I think this would be awesome in there. Even just one flyer just ignites that deck, and it's not even counting all this other stuff that could happen with the deck. So yeah, look out for this one. I think this is going to be a card that sees some play in standard as well as a few other formats. Open the Armory. So this is a tutor. This time you're looking for an aura or an equipment card. That's good. Tutors are good, and this one only costs 2. I guess I'm having a hard time thinking of what I want to tutor for, though, in standard. So I don't know, maybe something is out there that I'm not thinking of that's really good, or perhaps something will be coming, and if so, then yeah, maybe this will see some standard play. Tutor effects are very powerful, but I'm seeing this card more as a commander card again. This will be awesome to just be another tutor in Commander to get something you really want when you need it. And it's a cool cube card as well. If you have a cube that's based around a lot of equipment or something like that, this could be good for you. Limited, if I have really good equipment cards, then yeah, I might run this. But it's a little bit niche, obviously. Most of the time, you're probably not going to have the opportunity to play it. Paranoid Parish Blade. This is another just fine limited creature for you. A 3/2 for 3 is just fine in limited. A 4/2 for a striker, if you have Delirium, is awesome in limited. So it's just one of those things you can't lose either way. So yeah, you might as well just play it in limited. Next is Pious Evangel, which transforms into Wayward Disciple, and I really like the design of this card. Front side, basically a Soul Sister. Back side, basically a Blood Artist-esque card, and it's also a 2/4 blocker, which is nothing to lose sight of either. So in limited, yeah, this is going to be phenomenal for you. Early game, you want the Soul Sister effect. Late game, you're going to want the Aristocrat effect, and it's fantastic, right? There's even already Aristocrat style decks in standard, so this could potentially just fit into one of those decks, or it could go into a brand new deck, maybe one that's just playing a lot of small creatures and going wide. It would still be good in a deck like that. So keep an eye on this one. I think it's going to see play in probably a number of locations. I could see this in Commander, I could see it in definitely limited and standard as well. Puncturing Light. So this is actually a reprint. I think it was from Rise of the Eldrazi, I believe, which is kind of ironic because it's targeting small creatures. But at the same time, here's the issue with this card this time around. It's a destroy effect, so it's putting a card in your opponent's graveyard. Not super exciting in this format, but it does only cost 2. It is an instant, and let's face it, sometimes you just need this type of removal in your deck in limited. If you don't have any better options, you might have to go with this, and you might not love it, but it's still going to be just fine for you. Reaper of the Flight Moonsilver. Here's another card I really like the design. Basically, if you have Delirium, this becomes a Fallen Angel. Now, if you ever played with Fallen Angel in the past, it hasn't been printed in a number of years now, but in limited, it kind of is a bomb because it's a sort of like Nantuko Husk with evasion, and that kind of gets crazy kind of quick. So your opponent just almost always has to block this thing because you're just threatening lethal all the time if you just have a few creatures on the board, especially in the late game. So they just have to make some unprofitable blocks. So it's great in limited. I think it's a little too pricey for standard, unfortunately, but I do really like this card. I think it can do some work for you and really sneak up on your opponent in limited. Silver Strike, and this is another destroy effect, so not too much more to say that I didn't say in the last card. You're going to play it when you need it, but if you have better types of removal, then maybe you get to skip it if you're lucky. But I think a lot of times you're just going to run it because it's still removal. Spectral Shepherd. Well, this one's interesting. I mean, it's a 2/2 flyer for 3, which is pretty good and limited. But I also like the fact that if you're playing maybe Azorius, you do get to return some spirits to your hand to protect them, or maybe you're going to use that board sweep we saw earlier or something like that. Yeah, fine limited card, rather reasonably costed. Stern Constable. I'm not super thrilled with this card. I just feel like its sole purpose is a discard effect. Now, if you need a discard effect, yeah, you'll run it in limited and you'll be happy with it. If you don't need a discard effect, you're probably going to skip this one. Strength of Arms. Now finally we get a cheap pump spell for white that's a little bit of a combat trick. So this is going to pump something +2/+2, and if you happen to have equipment, you get a token out of it too. So you get a little bit of value here. It's really cheap. I don't mind running one of these in my limited deck. Survive the Night. Another combat trick. This one I like because it does help my creature survive maybe a destroy effect or something like that, and I also get to investigate off it. I think 3 is reasonable for that. So yeah, I'm going to run one of these and be pretty happy and limited. Tenacity. So this is actually a pretty powerful effect. I mean, 4 feels a little pricey, but just the fact that you pump your whole team and they get lifelink, and then you get to untap them, so you almost get kind of a quasi-vigilance too. That's actually quite strong. So this is going to be very good for you in limited. I think any aggressive deck is going to be trying to find a way to run this. So keep an eye on this for some potential standard play. I could see this in standard, and it's also a really good card for some commander decks that are looking to go aggressive and wide. Thalia's Lieutenant. Now here's kind of the human lord, if you will, for the set. And if you open this, pack 1, and you make this your pick 1, yeah, you're probably going to want to go out there and draft a whole bunch of humans. The only thing I would say, though, is be kind of careful with that strategy, because there are some mediocre humans out there. And if you just start picking up not so great humans, really banking on the fact that you're always going to have this card in play, you might be in for a bad day, because if this card doesn't get drawn, or if this card gets destroyed early on, then all of a sudden you just have a bunch of mediocre cards. So be careful. But there are some decent humans out there and some decent support cards for humans, like some of the equipment and stuff. So there is a deck to be had out there. Just don't fall into the trap. So having said that, yeah, this is a fine limited card. I think it will do quite well. As far as standard goes, it could see some play. There are a lot of good humans from previous sets and some good humans that are very economical from this set. So if the beatdown deck chooses humans as kind of their go-to creature type, yeah, this could see a little bit of play there for sure. It's just very reasonably costed. Theraban Inspector. So this is okay for limited if I have nothing else. And the reason I say that is, I mean, it's a 1-drop. I'm not investing a whole lot into it. And I do like the fact that I can investigate and get a clue token, but I'm not super thrilled with the card in general. It doesn't do a whole lot for me. The only thing that this is good for, of course, is if you're going with a human synergy with like the last card we saw, or maybe you had a lot of equipment that's going to help bolster your humans. Other than that, you're probably going to skip this. Topplegeist. I actually like Topplegeist a lot. This was one of the cards that was in the dual deck, and I got to play with it a little bit. And the fact that it's a 1/1 flyer for 1 isn't super exciting, but if you think you can get Delirium with any sort of consistency, this becomes actually quite good. So in limited, if I'm confident, and I have to be real confident that I can get Delirium, then I don't mind running this. If I'm not super confident, then I'll probably skip it and put something else in. There could be a standard deck out there. Again, if there's a standard deck that can easily get Delirium, I can see this running the card. It could do a little bit of early damage, and then it can tap down big blockers for later in the game. Maybe it's a sideboard card, I don't know, but I do feel like it's on the cusp of maybe being able to make it into standard. Next we have Town Gossipmonger, which transforms into Incited Rabble. This one I'm not really excited about. There's just too many conditions on this card. So, okay, it's a 1-drop, so what do you expect, right, for a 1-drop? It's probably not going to be super good. It is a human, so there are some synergies there, but you get this 1/1, you have to tap it and something else to flip it, and then when you flip it, now it's already tapped, so you can't really do anything the turn you flip it, and then it has to attack each turn, and then it has fire breathing, but it's making you pay 2 to fire breathe. There's just a lot better things I could be doing with my time and my energy and my resources than this card. So I don't know, this one just feels kind of like a trap to me. I'm just not very excited about it. Unruly Mob. So this was originally printed in the first Innistrad and very flavorful, but if you played limited in the first Innistrad, you kind of know that usually this card just doesn't feel like the payoff's worth what you have to do to get there. When you lose a creature, it gets a +1/+1 counter, but it starts off as a 1/1 for 2. So by the time you cast this, you get a 1/1 for 2. If it survives, maybe now it's a 2/2. Maybe you get yourself a 3/3. If you're lucky, it becomes a 4/4, and then it gets destroyed. It just seemed to be how it always happened for me. So even though it seems like it could be okay, it just doesn't quite get there. And again, I don't know if I'm going to be crazy to try to run this again in the new limited. All right, last card of the day, Vessel of Ephemera. And here's my thing with this card. I feel like it's a little overcosted because I'm paying 2 white and 3 generic for 2 spirit tokens. It just really makes me miss Lingering Souls. I love Lingering Souls. That was one of my favorite cards, and this is no Lingering Souls, so it kind of is what it is. Now, having said that, Lingering Souls was too powerful. I admit it, and no, they shouldn't reprint it, and I'm okay with that. So, as far as this card goes, here's where I would use it. If I'm really focused on getting Delirium, getting an enchantment in my graveyard could be a big step towards that. So I might run something like this in limited if I feel like, okay, it might help me get Delirium and I get a couple white spirit tokens with flying out of it. Alright, I could run it. But yeah, it's not going to be something I run all the time, obviously. So, having said that, those are all the white cards in Shadows Over Innistrad. So like I said at the top of the show, we'll be back tomorrow with all of the blue cards, and then so on and so forth. We're going to make it all the way through. So until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks as always for watching. This video, like all my videos, was made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Even a donation of $1 helps me to keep growing this community and creating better quality videos for all of you. Check out our Patreon page for exclusive giveaways and future goals for the channel. If you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the MTG news, spoilers, set reviews, product openings, or finance videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a good day.